You're very welcome to the Firm and Fast Golf podcast. I'm your host, Shane Derby. I'm pleased to welcome Richard Pennell back to the pod for this his third appearance. In addition to hawking the final few copies of the truly fantastic Grassroots book, which was published last year, keeping us all entertained with his weekly instalments on his Substack blog, Pitchmarks, Richard has also chiselled out some time to, of late, wander far and wide around the coast of the island of Ireland in search of Dublin golf. You may recognise many of the course names. However, there may just be a few that might not be quite so familiar. I caught up with him recently to get his thoughts and impressions on Irish links golf, to find out where he went, what might draw him back, and how the Irish golf experience may differ from elsewhere. It's always a pleasure to spend time with Richard, and this occasion was no different. We really do hope you enjoy our conversation. Richard Pennell, you're very welcome once again to the Firm and Fast Golf podcast. How the hell are you?
Very good, Shane. Thank you. Good to see you.
Absolutely. It's hard to believe that your last appearance was back in April 2023 when you were getting ready to release Grassroots.
Yeah, time flies. But we've played golf a fair bit since then.
We have.
Catch up on.
We have. And just for people that might be considering last minute Christmas present shopping, are there still any copies of Grassroots out there?
I have a small box behind me. Yeah. It's
well, better that than a big pallet, hey?
Yeah. The pallet has gradually been worn down. It's lovely, actually. It's sending them all over the place. So quite a few to Ireland, loads of the States, Canada, Australia. It's just been so much fun connecting with people. So
for those that have bought a copy, it's now time to start buying up copies because they're actually, once they're gone, they're gone. Listen, for a man that told me he was taking a complete break from golf the last time we played, your actions at Royal Wimbledon, New Zealand and Pennell of late would tend to suggest that statement has turned out to be pretty much factually incorrect.
Yeah, funny one. I needed a break, really, and I'd been away a fair bit on little trips here and there this year, and, well, we'll come on to Ireland, but there's been in Ireland as much as I've been in England, so I needed a break. And so when we walked off Baltray, I had every intention of not playing for at least the rest of the year and possibly January, February. Loads to do, I've got loads of writing stuff I want to do. It lasted 15 days. And Royal Wimbledon's too lovely a place to not go and play. So turned up there and then there was a gap in the weather last week. So got to Pennell, which I haven't been to for so long. It was so good. And then, New Zealand this morning and one or two other opportunities of broke embargo on golf. So, I thought 2 weeks was quite a good effort, I thought. But
so Michelle is still unimpressed with you?
No, that's all good. She's amazing. She's an angel. So,
well, listen, you're obviously still pumping out your weekly missive on Substack to great effect. I will remind you, not that you need reminding, that you still owe Baltray and Dollymount a mention at some point.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm well aware of that. So Dollymount is fine, and I'll have at least 2 versions of that, and loved it. And there's so much there, so much history, and the golf course just, I was expecting it to be good. It was just terrific. The whole thing, actually, not just the golf course, the history, the club, the feel of it's a real golfers club. And that close to the middle of Dublin. It's just wonderful. I knew I was going to like it from the moment I was told I was only allowed to call it Dollymount. So that's my shout out to
You were under instruction, yeah?
Yeah, strict instruction. And I kept to it, I think. So that will come. But Baltray, I still got a blank page. I've just got the date. And I don't know what to say, because how can I transport anyone to that? I knew it was going to be good. I love Tom Simpson, but and I love links golf, and I love playing golf in Ireland. So it was always going to blow me away.
Keep your powder dry for a second, right? I want to hear about this £10 set of clubs, first of all.
Have you read that?
Yes, I have. But for the benefit of listeners, I will stick a link into the article itself.
Oh, it's lovely. Well, the Lynx Diary, for those of you who haven't come across it, you need to anyway, but it's just hit its 10th edition, I think. It's a Scottish-based magazine just singing the praises of the pure game. They've got loads of good people writing for it. Jim Hartzell's in there every time, but also the photography's brilliant. It's absolutely speaks to me, the thing, and I'm delighted to be able to contribute the odd thing here and there. They've been wonderful. So I was just fully expecting a no. I just had this idea of writing a piece about my half set, which you've seen. I mean, it's cobbled together from bits and pieces. It actually cost £9.50 in total, not £10. And there's skip fines and things people are throwing away. And at the same time, classic. It's a set of, well, it's not a set, there's 7 clubs in there, but the irons are TP19s, Mizunos that I grew up with, and a lump of persimmon in there that cost me £3. And anyway, Lynx Diary had enough humour about them to let me publish that, and Simon, our mutual friend at Cleve, took some gorgeous photos, and so that's in the latest Lynx Diary. I just love that sort of thing. Golf doesn't have to be an expensive pastime, and you can get just as much joy flushing a bit of persimmon down the fairway, as you were finding out recently. I so enjoyed watching you play persimmon. I think that might be the way forward for you as well.
Well, I did hit them particularly well that day. It's funny, I went out a little time after, which is the last round of golf I had, and I hit them atrociously. So now, mind you, I was playing with a former collegiate golfer from the States who sort of looked at me going, "You're seriously going to play with those? You know, how many clubs have you in your bag?" About 8 or 9. It was actually with Niall, who joined us at Dollymount. And it was like a 4-man team event, and our plan was not to enter, and the yank insisted on us entering. So there was 3 of us, 2 to score in every hole. Needless to say, we ended up about 20 points short. But anyway, it was one of those days that I wished I probably hadn't brought them out, but always nice, always nice. Our main event today is really looking back retrospectively. I mean, at this stage, with the amount of visits you've had over here over the last, I think, 15 or 16 months, we could almost call you an honorary Irishman. 4 visits at least across the Irish Sea, all to coastal locations. Before we delve into a bit of detail on the venues and the locations that you visited, perhaps you can tell the listeners where you went and what you saw.
Yeah, so October last year, got the opportunity to go back to Portrush, which I'd played once before, but back in 2004, and there'd been changes there since. So it was a whistle-stop tour, so we played Dunluce, and then we drove to Rosapenna, and I'd never been to Rosapenna before, and played St Patrick's in I wouldn't like to guess, it's probably a 30 or 40 mile an hour wind, but you know the place, it's exposed up there, and so we got blown all over the place, and trolleys flying tipping over and balls flying all over, but I was just absolutely enchanted by St Patrick's, and then on the way home from there, stopped in at Ballyliffin, which was getting ready for this year's amateur championship, and played the old course at Ballyliffin. In fact, there were 8 of us on that trip. It was sort of a media trip, and 6 of them weren't playing the back 9. One of them walked off the 7th. It was driving rain. It was, just one of those days. But a chap called Alex Frolish and I played the back 9. I played with one club, and I need to go back to Ballyliffin, actually. It was wonderful. The old course. The weather eased off, so there's 2 of us on the course and the other 6 are in the bars, you'd expect from golf writers. And the weather eased off, and the back 9 runs along the bay there. It's just absolutely fabulous. So that was the first trip. Then in May this year, I got to go back to Rosapenna, which is where we met up down there, and spent 3 days there with Simon Pope from Cleve and yourself. And on the way in, went to Critch Island. Critch Island?
Critch, yeah.
Every time I try and say that, I choose the wrong one. Critch Island. And just whizzed around there twice. That was just fabulous place. And there's hardly anyone's heard of Critch Island, I think, but well worth the trip. And then Rosapenna played the Old Tom several times, Sandy Hill several times, St Patrick's another 3 times, I think. Played the Coast Guard 9 several times, mostly with Hickories or one club, and just got to sort of get a feel for what it's like to spend some time at Rosapenna and Downing's a cute little town up the road, and on the beach, Strathaven Bay. It's just a magical place. So that took some acclimatizing from coming home from there. Then about a month later, got to go to Cairn. So a friend of mine at Rye, Jamie's the secretary down at Rye. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. It's probably too late now, but he joined Cairn during lockdown and had never been. So what a privilege to go with him and share that experience and see him, well, and me, because I hadn't been either. You know, I hadn't invested several £1,000s in it. So to see him go there for the first time and just jaw drop at the course and the setting, just immense dunes, and it's wild golf. And while we were there was one day where it was so wet we couldn't face Cairn, so we got in the car thinking it would be any different down the road. Went to Achill Island, which is 9 holes on linksy turf in a field, just basically some flags, but still really good golf. And then Mulranny, which is a proper links course, 9-hole links course, with these like tin huts to hide from the weather. And they're about every 50 yards at Mulranny, and you turn up and the sun was, peeking through when we got there. It wasn't actually driving rain when we got to Mulranny. And we thought, why are they so regular? Well, we found out pretty quickly you need them that regular some days. So, but proper, authentic Irish golf. And then Dublin with you. And thank you so much for everything you organised there. So always wanted to go to Royal Dublin, Dollymount. Always wanted to go to Portmarnock and Baltray, County Louth. Had been knocking on the door for a long time. So to tick those 3 off. That sounds wrong, actually, to tick them off. I savoured each of them. They're just so different, but each just wonderful in their own way. So yes, been spending a lot of time on flights to Ireland and recently on a ferry, and just, I could live there in a flash. It's wonderful.
One of the themes I was thinking about this morning when I was out for a walk was not only did our golfing companion in Rosapenna, Simon Pope, who had never been to Ireland before, first of all, obviously with his Scottish wife, the tendency was to go north as opposed to west, which is completely understandable. But I think it was Donegal was an eye-opener for him, and certainly your daughter Agnes, and indeed your wife Michelle, post the visit to Dublin, were kind of, I think your daughter particularly said, I could live here quite happily.
No, stronger than that. She said, when I'm a bit older, if you're looking to find me, I'll be here. But yeah.
Now, mind you, she was probably referencing, in addition to the nice people and whatnot, the leafy environs of South Dublin, which is lovely, where you stayed in Dalkey, it must be said.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It's just an amazing place, and so close to the middle of town.
Keeping bad company with Bono and Enya and Lisa Stansfield and others.
Yeah, although I was looking out for them, but yeah. Trying to sell them books, really, but they were understandably hidden. So,
listen, if we backtrack to your first visit to Portrush and Ballyliffin, as you said, it was a media trip with Tourism Ireland. What are your recollections of the Dunluce? Did you get to see the Valley as well, or?
Not this time. So I'd played the Valley a couple of times last time round, but a long time ago. So no, it was sort of whistle stop. And yeah, it made sense to not spend much time there, because otherwise we wouldn't have got all the way to St Patrick's. But Dunluce was just wonderful. Amazing how some of these places I don't remember the holes particularly well, but Dunluce, it just came flooding back almost instantly, turning into the property. And the two new holes, aren't there, in the front nine there.
7 and 8, yeah.
7 and 8, yeah. I mean, they fit in the landscape. I wouldn't guess they were new. The whole thing was in sensational condition, and we had a lovely day there. Bit of breeze, but it's a rare thing that a course can be so much fun to play for someone at my handicap level and for the average member of a club like that, and yet still be challenging enough to push out and have elite golf there as they do. And roll on next year's Open. Shane, can you hear a fair bit of noise in the background?
Just a little bit, but it's okay. Have you got mice again?
I'll explain offline why we can't talk about that.
That's all right. That's okay. I was fortunate enough to get up to play the Dunluce for the first time actually in about 3 years. Back end of October, back end of August, start of September. And the one thing that struck me is, the coastal holes and those with the views are the obvious choices for best holes or preferred holes. But I think oftentimes it's actually the landlocked holes there that kind of blow you away. I mean, the fourth, that one that runs down parallel without a bounds down to White Rocks, is just such a great hole. And even, that downhill par 3 with the green that runs front right to back left and the back 9, which might be 12 or 13 if I remember correctly. There's just so much variety there, and the green site just asks so many questions in terms of picking the right line, and relatively speaking, for mere mortals like us, being in the right portion of the fairway to actually attack the pin or attack the axis of the green properly.
Yeah. And the green, the actual greens themselves vary so much in contour and direction and size and where the danger sits. What's the one? There's one that's sort of perched up. It almost looks like it could have come out of Pinehurst number 2.
That's the one after the par 3, which I think is 13 or 14, if that makes any sense.
14 rings a bell.
You don't want to miss left because there's a big horrible bunker on the left hand side. You don't really want to miss right because you're kind of down in the valley of Sin, and you certainly don't want to go long. So it really does. And the more you, again, with all great courses, Rich, the more you play it, the more you understand, and you're paralyzed by analysis almost, in terms of don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, and you don't end up doing the right thing as a result of Harry coping in your head.
Yeah, he's still there, isn't it? It's so much fun, Dunluce. It's a mischievous great golf course, isn't it? Some of them are slogs, and it's not like that at all. It's just it was so good to be back, and my appetite for watching I don't watch much golf on TV. I can't wait to watch next year's Open and watch them go and, make some of the mistakes we made. Wonderful place.
Well, all of Ireland will be watching Weemac, and indeed all of the UK as well. We'll be watching Weemac off the first tee, hoping that he doesn't manage to go to bounds this time.
Yeah, well, one of ours did, but I won't mention him by name. Yeah, it wasn't me though, so it's customary snap hook left instead. But yeah, amazing play.
Yeah, obviously you played the Valley previously. There has been recent Mackenzie and Ebert revisions and upgrades ongoing there. So I sort of saw most of the changes, with the exception of the new holes on the western side, which would have been the old Skerries par 3 course. I believe they're going to be back open towards the golf season next year, just from a growing perspective. But the feedback, certainly from the few members that I know, has been very positive in terms of the changes. And I think the Valley, which is a favourite of mine anyway, certainly will have a few more teeth from a North of Ireland Championship perspective. The Portrush goes from strength to strength, and for somewhere you might think would be quite austere, just the welcome is just really, 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 really nice there, both in the clubhouse and obviously the town down the way. I hope to get back up there next year again. So you had a rather blustery and wet experience in Ballyliffin, by the sounds of it.
Yes, yeah, but again, just in a similar way, we to have two courses of that quality. We played the old. We got glimpses as you go of the Glashidi. It just felt like such a solid golfing club. The golf courses are fantastic. The practice facilities are great. We didn't have time to go on. I wanted to go on the is it the pollen links there? The
pollen, yeah. Relatively, I think that opened up during COVID times. That's another Pat Ruddy creation, which is great when a club has some additional land. The multifunctional sort of 9-hole course and as Clates was saying, if you even last week, even if you have a bit of extra land, Himalayas putting greens, and it goes hand in hand in terms of introducing the younger generation to the game of golf.
Yeah, younger and the older too. There's people. I was reminded of that at Royal Wimbledon the other day. Their putting green there's famous. It's fast, and there's a schools thing that's played there every year in June, which is just lovely. And lots of the people who play in that, probably some of them don't play golf anymore, or they can only play 9 holes or whatever. But putting just keeps you connected to the game and connected to the people. And anyway, Ballyliffin was wonderful, even in those conditions. So I hope to go back there and spend a bit more time there and play both courses.
Well, I'm sure you'd be very welcome. And even one-handed putting on the putting green certainly seems to be something that you're moving towards with great effect, actually.
At your expense at Walton Heath, yeah.
Yeah, well, we were on opposite teams that day. But, you did come good on the 18th at Dollymount, to be fair, after Mr. Grimes held his 5th birdie putt of the day.
Classic.
The first putt wasn't too convincing, but the second putt was, without doubt, centre cut. Anyway, onwards to May of this year, Richard. No lack of golf, and thank you for allowing me to gate crash your party with Simon. It was too good of an opportunity to miss, having not seen Pennell and particularly St. Patrick's for the bones of 20 odd months, and the difference between what I saw in May and what I had previously seen. It's amazing, as our dinner companion Angela Moser said, when you're building a new golf course, the work that goes into it can very much be seen pretty similarly to surgery, and the healing process for the turf and the ground just takes time. So sort of, 4 seasons in, or the start of the 4th season from opening, it was great to see, first of all, but the difference between what I saw in May and what I'd seen the last time I was up there was astounding. I mean, it's amazing how nature really heals itself.
Fabulous condition, wasn't it? I mean, all the golf there was in great nick, but St. Patrick's had probably been open a month at that point, because they're close to the winter, and it was just already purring. So October to May was my spacing, so what's that, 8 months or whatever, and it was so much better. And not that it was bad the first time, actually, but it was just in fabulous condition. The ball's running everywhere. The style of the mowing there, they've just got the feel of it just right. It's playing surfaces are beautiful, but they, at the edges, they just blend into the natural. It's not just the bunkering, it's the way the mowing lines are just take you off the edge of the main corridors, and then it's just a very soft transition somehow into the waste areas, which I saw a bit of the waste areas, but I mean, I found that amazing listening to Angela talk about the maturity of the place and how it settled down. And I can't imagine what it's like to be involved that much in a project like that, and then to watch it just slowly mature and just get more and more wonderful. And probably the word about the place as more people go post opening, and we travel getting easier and so on after COVID, and the conditions improving, it's just feels like there are ripples just heading out to the rest of the world about St. Patrick's, and it deserves all of them. It's just a majestic place.
So you were on the ground for about 4 days, I think, in terms of that trip?
Yeah.
And I reckon you played about 180 holes over those 4 days, something like that.
Yeah, I did count it. I can't remember. It was something like that, wasn't it? And I'd lost track of the number. In the gaps between rounds, you'd just go and spin round Coast Guards with a a mashie just to clear my head and think about what I'd just seen. But it's just an amazing place. The variety of the golf as well. The three courses are quite different. And Old Tom has evolved loads, and so Sandy Hills to a lesser degree. And then Rosapenna's this sort of new big sister, but they complement each other beautifully, I think. And you reminded me, and thank you for that one of the key things I wanted to write about when talking about that trip was this sort of notion of a cairn. A cairn gets built by people picking up a stone each and putting it on the pile at the top of the mountain. Rosapenna's been around for a very long time, and then more recently has had a second and then a third course and lots of changes along the way. So there's a whole lot of hands, architectural and ownership, and a massive enthusiastic joyous input of the Casey family. It's just, I've not been anywhere like it, and I'd imagine somewhere like Bandon is a true resort in that you go there and there's nothing but the golf. I think that could be true of Rosapenna, but then it's not quite for me, because although the golf's amazing, you just wander into town for a cup of coffee, or there's karaoke on at the local bar, or the beaches are to die for. The views are spectacular. It's like playing golf in a Hollywood movie set. It's just wonderful.
I have a note down here, and I know it's something we kept coming back to when we were up there. Just the fit and the sense of place up there. It's pretty idyllic.
Excuse me, slurping coffee. Yeah, it's golf sometimes just doesn't feel like it belongs where it is, and at Rosapenna the whole thing just feels at home in the landscape and complementary to the landscape. So you've got this amazing views, but the golf's not spoiling those for a moment. That's just wonderful. I had one massive takeaway from, you'll come on to the dinner I'm sure, but the one thing Angela said, because I kept going round, particularly St. Patrick's, and thinking, wow, look, you can see across from here to that green. Is that random chance or whatever? And either you or I asked Angela about that, and she said, no. They were on site so long, they looked at that place from every single angle, just completely engrossed in that act of creation, that nothing there is by mistake, and yet it all feels so natural, and there's not a single blade of grass that feels like it's contrived or overplanned or artificial. It's
we were very fortunate that Angela Moser, obviously part of the design and build team, should I say, with Renaissance Golf Design, joined us for a bite to eat at the Old Glen Bar, which was a treat for, I think, not only me, but yourself and Simon as well. I mean, to hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were, in terms of the respect and the time and effort that was put into the place, and, matching features in the distance with the middle ground and the foreground. She explained the process very much like painting a picture. And I mean, I've been lucky enough to play the place, 10 times at this stage. And I think I shared with you a subsequent, my last visit there, I found a piece of the the fourth green that I didn't realize existed before, that wraps around. It's like a tongue that wraps around the bunker, which is pinnable. I checked with Frank Jr. They haven't pinned it yet, but it just, when you're still finding things 10 plays in that surprise you and almost bowl you over, you just are going, the level of detail that the team that built it went into is extraordinary.
Yeah. As you know, I was writing about this earlier in the week and last week, making notes and stuff. And there were a couple of bits that middle stretch probably doesn't get as much, people tend to focus on the same bits as those big reveals early on and that 14th that swings down towards Tramore Beach and swings right. It's just thrilling tee shot there. But the 10th, I just completely fell for the 10th the first time round and couldn't wait. It took 8 months to get back there. Couldn't wait to play it again. And then it's an amazing green. And then you play 11 with this crazy ledge on the right-hand side and just another brilliant target to aim at.
Yeah, I must post up that video again as a companion piece to this podcast.
Oh, well, you don't need to do that. So I don't need to shame me. The 11th green, you could stand there for 5 hours chipping balls and putting balls round. It's just a wonderful hole. And then 12's just deceitful. You think you've got sort of 100 yards left and you come over the brow of the hill and there's another. The dog's entering the room.
That's all right. Hello, Betty.
Hey, Betty. Yeah, just that stretch is marvellous. But then the other bit that I really, really love is the first time we played there, it was really windy and we all suffered despite loving the place unreservedly. But 18 is just such a brilliant hole. You've played a big golf course, a grand scale to the place and lots of thrilling shots and tough shots and fun holes. But 18 is just such a teaser, shortish par 4, but loads of danger. And you sort of look at it on the card and actually standing on the tee, you think, what's all the fuss about? But you've got to be so precise. I thought it was a really lovely end to the round because the handicapped golfer might make 4 or even 3 and just walk off, thrilled to bits after a 3-4 hour battering beforehand. But the scratch golfers got to be really careful. They'll be thinking they're going to make 3 and you could make 7 or 8. Well, I don't think I finished it, did I, the one time?
Well, I don't know about that. I certainly do remember you holding a putt. You weren't with me. You were playing in front with Simon, and you held a birdie putt on the last with your eyes closed.
Yeah,
that's kind of taking the piss, Richard.
Well, with my eyes open and both hands on the putter, I don't hold anything, so I'm clutching at straws, I think. But yeah, it feels like the sort of place where magic can happen, though. Pennell, it's just an amazing place. So.
And talking about magic, I mean, I seem to remember taking a picture of you as we were waiting to play on the 18th. So your last hole of the trip, you're kind of staring into the middle ground, almost at one with the golf course. Now, it must be said you did go on to hole a 7-iron for an eagle on the 18th, which was a great way to finish the trip. You might just tell us what feelings, thinking back particularly on the back 9 of the old Tom Morris course, the Valley 9, what feelings and thinking back evokes?
I loved the look of that bit, and it made sense that was the bit that perhaps has as much cult there as anywhere, really. It felt you played Rye recently, I know. It felt very reminiscent of Rye in the feel that back 9. There's a wonder. What's the par 3 that goes across? Is that 14? And then you come back in from there. They're just lovely. The whole of that Valley 9 actually is fabulous. And then you get this wonderful long finish going up under the clubhouse and old Tom sort of in the distance on his plinth there. It was funny. I sort of I know what the photo you're talking about, and I know how I was feeling. I was sort of reluctant to leave Pennell by that point because, a lot of golf and a lot of just treading that fine sandy soil, and it just got into my blood somehow. There's a different feel about it. It feels like a retreat. The original hotel was... there's a poster, isn't there, in the foyer of the new hotel that says something like Islands Norway, and it was meant to be a retreat where you go to reset your soul or whatever. It just completely felt like that to me. It left technology behind, just been knocking balls around for 3.5 days solid, around people who would just love the game as well. It just felt like a complete antidote to modern life there. And I think I was melting into the landscape. Maybe I need to do that before every 7-iron and my golf will get better. It's funny that it went in after that.
It is the world's oldest golf resort, 1893. We can thank Lord Leitrim and old Tom Morris's foresight. In fact, initially, I think Lord Leitrim wanted to build a golf course around his Mulroy House estate, and they went out sightseeing, and Tom goes, let's put the golf course here. You own this piece of land too. So, and funnily enough, he came over from St Andrews by paddle steamer into Milford. So you can just imagine what getting around northwest Donegal in 1893 was like.
Well, it remains a remote place. It sort of feels remote when you get there because it's unspoiled. It's just wonderful, huge views and wild terrain. The wild Atlantic, lives up to its name there. But they must have worked so hard to get old Tom there. Imagine trying to get there in the late 1800s. And these days, the roads are amazing. The flights are amazing. It's just so easy to get there. And yet it feels when you get there that you're at the other end of the earth. It's just such a step change in the environment that you're immersed in there. It's just an amazing place. All of it.
Just for those that are listening and might be interested in wondering how one can get to northwest Donegal, there is an airport actually, Carrickfinn Airport, which is out towards about 20 minutes drive away from Critch Island. In fact, Carrickfinn was relatively recently voted as one of the most scenic airports in the world, would you believe? So you can fly from Dublin to Carrickfinn. It's about a 30-minute flight, I think. You flew over from Heathrow, didn't you, with Logan?
Yeah, into Derry, which was great.
Into Derry, which is about a 60-minute drive from Rosapenna. And then Critch is about a 45-minute drive to Rosapenna. So if you're going to Rosapenna, you most definitely have to get up the road and check out not only Critch, but you have Dunfanaghy, which is just around the coast a little bit. And you've also got Northwest, which is down towards Buncrana. No lack of good golf up in those parts. In fact, there's even a flight from Glasgow, would you believe, with Loganair into Carrickfinn, into Donegal. And obviously you can get there via Dublin or Belfast as well. It's about a 2.5-hour drive from Belfast to Rosapenna, and about a 4-hour drive from Dublin to and as I said, you simply must append Critch to your itinerary. Your next trip, which was a very fleeting trip, I believe, into Cairn. You flew London into Knock, I believe.
Yeah, which was terrific again. So I think it was London Stansted. Okay. And Knock is just absolutely charming. It's sort of tiny airport, and it takes 4 minutes to get in the hire car and off you go. It's wonderful. But the lovely thing about flying into Knock is you see in daylight, you see quite a lot of the landscape as you're on the way there. So that was great.
As a complete aside, Knock Airport, right, was built back in the 80s, I think, but championed by a dude called Monsignor James Horan, right, who I think was head of the Basilica there. So there's actually a shrine in Knock. I'm not much of a holy Joe, as it were, but so it's a place of pilgrimage.
Yeah.
And obviously you got Croagh Patrick there as well, not a million miles away. But Monsignor Horan basically fundraised and banged the drum and got funding from government and probably the EEC at the time, as it was. And now they have an airport, and it's easier to get to Cairn if you're going directly to Cairn. And I'm sure Jerry and Fiona and the team there looked after you mightily well.
Yeah, they were wonderful. Particularly as I I'd failed to book in the correct month. So did I tell you this? I can't remember.
You did, but this will just give listeners a vignette of how Richard's head works, or perhaps doesn't work.
Yeah, classic. We had about a week to go, I think, and we'd had this exchange. Fiona, the general manager, had just been wonderful. It was Jerry's reading from his diaries, I think, for the Golfers' Journal that had caught Jamie's attention. And Jamie had, joined the club and done the life member thing. And Fiona had been great and organised tea times, said, look, you can play here, here and here. We were trying to juggle it a bit so we could tag on Mulranny and Echill Island. And she did all that, couldn't be more helpful. And then there's a couple of days to go, and I'm just checking the timings just to make sure we're not late for our tea time or whatever. And the message says July, and so I sent one back and said just to check. You do mean June, don't you? She said no. I booked you for July because that's what you asked for. She scrolled down the email and realised it's me who's got it completely wrong. Fiona was so lovely about it. Just managed to not rip into me too much for my own ineptitude. Jamie did a bit of that, but anyway, she arranged it. We got to play, and they were just wonderful. Really, again, Balmullet's a charming town. It felt like Cairn, and the success of Cairn was really important for the local economy, and they employ a number of people there, and it gets people going in. They are they're on the tourist trail a bit. You get travelling golfers who are going to see the higher profile Irish links are stopping at Cairn these days, and they should. It's a fabulous place. And again, there's sort of got two courses at Cairn, haven't you? You have two routings, which I know you've talked about on the podcast before. And to get to play them all, well, both routings, I think we played both a couple of times. We probably played Ali's routing, the Wild Atlantic routing, 3 times, I think. And the other thing that was lovely was the way it's configured. We're both pretty quick. So we were playing 2 balls, and we would catch groups, but we'd always seem to catch them at a point where we could actually jump off over there, because we played half of the stuff in the afternoon. There was no one behind us. So we got some additional loops in. It just got to know the place really well.
For those that haven't been, 2 things just to pick up on what you've said there. When I was there back in April of this year, we got talking to one of the guys one barman actually, in the hotel in town. For the life of me, it's eluding me as to the name of the Talbot. Here we go. And my travel partner, Niall Higgins, who we played with in Royal Dublin recently, was just quizzing the barman as to, I'd obviously explained to him the importance of the golf course and what it means to the local economy. And he was there saying, well, if the golf course wasn't here, I'd be in America, or I'd be somewhere else. I'd be in Australia. Now it's just so central to what makes Balmullet tick. The inbound dollar or euro just is so central to the existence of Balmullet in how it's, and even, 5G radio towers for mobile, and just, obviously high speed internet and all that stuff, that the inward investment that the golfing euro, pound or dollar brings to the community. It's great, and to see them go from strength to strength. And you mentioned Jamie taking out life membership during COVID. To think that they nearly went bust. It's really is a community endeavour. That's how it was set up, and how, why it was built in the first place. It was a cooperative endeavour in relation to farmers essentially putting their land holdings together, and very much community built, obviously under the guise and the expertise of Eddie Hackett back in the late 80s, early 90s. It just goes to show what is possible with the right approach. And, there's no airs and graces about the place, but if you haven't been, you need to go. And if you've been, you need to go back.
Yeah. Yeah. And just stay in town, because town is just lovely. And we stayed in the other main hotel. I can't remember the name either.
The Broadhaven,
which was just gorgeous. And it's a small Irish town, but it feels like it's thriving, and the welcome from the people is, right across the board, whether you're at the golf club or the hotel or at the Chinese restaurant. They're just it's just a lovely feel about the place, and also stay over, because you then get to play both routings. So the Hackett routing is lovely, like just really, really wonderful, and it's a great place to be playing golf. But it's complemented and enhanced, I think, by Ali McIntosh's routing, so I think they roughly alternate days, so that if you stay over in town, you can play both, and you're playing two just wonderful world-class golf courses that way. And they have a very different feel, even though there's plenty of holes in common. Is it 8 holes that Ali put in there?
9.
So it goes from 8 up to...
When you play the Wild Atlantic routing, Ali's first is the 9th, I think.
9. 8 or 9. And,
yeah. Or the 8th could be. Anyway, I get confused. And to be fair, you can almost know too much, because I know which holes are Ali's and which holes are Hackett's. So, and they have been working on the signage over the last couple of years. If you're not paying attention, you could end up on the wrong hole in the routing, just by mistake or by choice.
Even if that happened, you're just guaranteed it's going to be a great hole, because it's just an amazing place. They're wonderful holes. The Wild Atlantic chunk where it goes up through that vast canyon, and the dunes are enormous. You're on top of the earth, really, at the top of that next tee. Is it maybe 9th tee or 10th tee? Yeah, it's just brilliant, really imaginative golf. Not necessarily long holes. There's some great short par 4s there. The short holes in particular are just thrilling. It's wonderful. It was such a privilege to go with Jamie and see him, go and play one of his clubs for the very first time, and then several times more while we were there. And you could tell he just didn't stop smiling the whole way. Neither did I, but he was connected to the place for another reason, and he just loved it.
So onwards to the end of October, the bank holiday weekend. At one point you were over to support your sister-in-law, who was going to do the marathon. And then she dropped out, but she ended up doing it in the end.
She did it under someone else's name, yeah. She sort of lost her place. But then another place came up, and my wife's got family in the Dublin area, and so 3 of the cousins did it with my sister-in-law. So the whole family were traipsing around Dublin trying to catch her at various points in the marathon, which was lovely. But you and I were looking for my golf ball around Portmarnock at that point.
It
was.
Yeah. No, was that the Sunday or the Monday?
Yeah,
it was the Sunday. Yeah,
Sunday.
It was Portmarnock. Yeah, so you got the ferry across. Obviously, you scootled up from the Greater London area. Up to Holyhead, and they got the ferry across en famille with the camper van.
Yeah,
and then decamped to the leafy environs of South County Dublin, as we said, with Bono and Enya for company. They weren't in evidence on that particular part of your trip. Interestingly, something I didn't mention to you, that not a million miles away from where you were, there's a nice little 9-holer called Fox Rock Golf Club, where Hugh Allison was actually secretary in 1908, and it underwent some cult revisions, would you believe, in 1914. So next time you're over, you might have to check Fox Rock out.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to. It's a gorgeous little part of the world, that south of Dublin there. It just feels like it's, got a microclimate. I know lots of people claim that. Lots of areas claim a microclimate, but it's so gentle. And we just take Betty down to the beach in the morning, and there'd be half a dozen people in the sea. And it's, it's not for me in October, but they're made of tough stuff down there. Yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah, and look, to be fair, it was just as well I was picking you up at the crack of dawn, because getting over from Portmarnock with traffic on a non-bank holiday weekend would be an absolute and utter nightmare. But anyway, I did that for the first time on the Sunday, and we were off to join my friend in Portmarnock. As we made our way down the entrance drive, it kind of teases you as you make your way down the entrance road. The estuary to your right, glimpses of fescue and marram, sand and flags to your left from the yellow 9 and the closing hole 17 in particular. And you wrote a lovely little blog piece, which I'll stick a link into as well. And I was muttering something along the lines of elegance or consistency or something like that. When you think back to the Portmarnock experience, what jumps out at you?
Couple of things. It was elegant, you said, and I couldn't improve on that, despite trying hard. The whole place has an elegance to it. It's got this amazing history and lots of championships and great champions and people across that piece of land, but Portmarnock's never shouting about itself. It's everything's just done really well, but understated. So even before we step on the golf course, the clubhouse experience is, I found, very interesting. All of that heritage, you could overburden people with it quite easily because there's so much has happened there. But they haven't. They've just done it really tastefully. They've curated what they want on show. They've done it in a manner that's in keeping with the rest of the clubhouse, which has a lovely traditional but very smart feel about it, like loads of wooden panelling and tasteful decor everywhere. It feels right. It just suits the place and the ambience of the club. And there were a few members around when we were playing, weren't there? Certainly behind us. So you got a taste for a sort of understatedness in the whole feel of Portmarnock on a Sunday morning. And then the golf course, just from the very off, it's it's pretty flat on a macro level. You can see across it, and you pick out these odd fairways and greens fluttering in the distance with not much to break them up, only a few trees here and there. So you get this sort of expansive feeling, which is helped by the sea on one side and the distant city skyline on the other. But then the micro contours, like around the greens. You talked a bit in advance about angles, but I had no idea what you were talking about really until I got there and understood it by getting a few of them wrong. So, it's a life's work to understand the golf course, I think. And you've played it a lot and still got some wrong. I was a first timer, I got loads wrong. It has hidden depths. And if you miss, you're not penalised in a horrible way, but you might have to work pretty hard for your bogey. Some of those runoffs and bunkers are menacing, but loads of fun. The condition of the course, I'm not sure I've seen anywhere like that this year. We've had a hell of a lot of rain in the UK, and Baltray and Royal Dublin were in fabulous condition too, but Portmarnock, it was immaculate and so firm. That was the bit that I just couldn't get over, how firm the greens were. You could barely make a pitch mark, no matter how pure your shot in. You couldn't make one. I hurt my finger trying to repair one when I finally made one. It was so firm. So you described it as a geological freak. I think that spit of land is just so well designed by nature to drain, but they clearly look after it really, really well as well. So, I love links golf and I like it firm and fast, and they couldn't have made it any better in conditioning. It was just mind-blowing, really.
I still remember the first time that I played there, and the feeling of excitement every time I've been subsequently. It never goes away.
No.
And the more you play it, the more you know it, and the more enjoyment actually, because in different winds and different weather conditions, it asks slightly different questions. The nuance to, never really heading in exactly the same direction ever. There's always a slight difference in terms of the angle. I mean, 1 and 2 probably head in the same direction a little bit, but after that you're around the clock face really, and there's always a wind in evidence, and the more you play it and the more you understand where the wind is coming from, the more you're driving down that entrance road going, this is a horrible wind to play this place in.
The lovely thing was I sort of left there still with 36 holes to play on the trip, but I left there thinking I need to get back, because you get enough of a glimpse when playing the red and the blue, the order we played. That's the main 18. You get enough of a glimpse of the yellow to think, wow, the members here, they can play any 2 of these 3 nines and it's properly world-class golf. And then the other bit that John was talking about, where they play once a year or something, or once in a blue moon, and they go out and play those little holes to the right
the
of
Outerland,
the first. Just, I'm like, for that sort of thing, it's, another one where it's so good. You could sort of close the approach road and just leave me out there for a couple of weeks and with a small bag of food, and I'd be perfectly happy. Be scrabbling around, in one greenside bunker or other. So, yeah, amazing.
For a short number of years, until a hurricane and a high tide conspired to flood the place, the Outerlands was actually a Donald Steele 9-hole as well. They use it now as parts of it as a turf nursery, and they need to play it once a year, and just to maintain their ownership of the land, I suppose. Ultimately, like, it will be interesting to see with possible larger events going in that particular direction, if they look to utilize any of that land. Just apropos that particular opportunity, and which I guess at this stage is probably a when as opposed to if. You've played quite a few open rota venues. Needless to say, the women's amateur was there in Portmarnock this year just gone, and it's obviously hosted the amateur championship back in 2019 when James Sugrue won. How would you assess Portmarnock as a potential major hosting venue?
I know nothing of the mechanisms behind these things, and there's a lot more to it than golf. But if we were just talking about the golf course in some simple parallel universe, it would be mind-blowing if it wasn't on the rota and hadn't been there for a long time. It's so good. I'm not sure It's difficult, yeah. I've only played it once, but the initial reaction was, wow. I mean, there are courses on the rota that I would play this over 9 times out of 10. It's that good, and I think the conditioning would just be a unique challenge for those guys, and for the elite, men and women. It's just a wonderful place to play on a fairly still day like we had. And from those back tees, I think they've still got a craftable around the golf course. If the wind picked up, it would be brilliant to watch, I think.
Yeah, it's 7,400 from way back. And a little bit of a theme here. Certainly some of the keyboard warriors have been out, not in force, but certainly there's an undercurrent to a certain degree going, well, how can you be bringing the British Open to Ireland? How does that work? And indeed, I'm sure, like, as a UK resident, there's certainly probably some murmurings across the pond as well in relation to that. I mean, how do you square that particular circle?
Not my problem.
Good answer.
Yeah, I love the golf course. I'd love to see him play there. But I mean, there's other links courses. I just love the idea of the professional game still retaining more access to these great, lots of them golden age golf courses. And the very nature of links golf means you sort of can do that because the players aren't going to go around in the 50s at Portmarnock anytime, ever. You know, there's enough intrigue and shot making requirement and enough of an influence from the weather and the bouncing ball that they're not used to make them really identify great champions there. I think it would, yeah. I can't pretend to understand even the slightest bit of the politics around it or the finances that play into that picture, but there are just amazing golf courses out there, and that's one of them where it would just be a shame if these events didn't go there, the Open and the Women's Open and the elite game. And it's all about the ball, and then, if we start on that, we'll go down a whole rabbit hole, but there's other places where if the focus wasn't so financial or the ball didn't go as far as it does, or a combination of those two, they'd be playing at maybe, who knows, Royal Porthcawl, back at Royal Cinque Ports, where I know you've been recently. Some of these places would be so much fun to watch elite golf being played there.
Well, I guess if you're trying to get 250,000 attendees over the week of an Open Championship, it probably does preclude some places that may be a little bit more difficult to get to, or indeed sites that perhaps aren't as logistically able to get people in, about and around for golf, really.
Yeah.
And it really, I guess it's got to the stage where obviously a big component part of the R&A's revenue stream comes from the Open Championship.
Yeah. Yeah. But what a place to be. If they could get it there, and let's hope they do, for anyone going to watch that Open, they're going to watch brilliant golf on a properly world-class golf course, and then get to enjoy Dublin. It would just be, I'd be there in a flash if I could get a ticket.
Well, I'm going to drag you off the isthmus at Portmarnock and the views across Baldoyle Estuary towards the cityscape, and bring you down the wooden bridge in Clontarf to Donegal. As we said, you were under strict instructions to use the correct nomenclature. You did well invariably. So we were off the blues at Royal Dublin, 6,400 yards with Niall and Everett. Out and back, a function of the parcel of land that we have. If memory serves, you were particularly taken with the greens and the billowing surrounds of short grass in evidence.
Yeah, loads of that, isn't there? And I haven't studied, I know you sent it to me or sent me some details, but I haven't studied how the course has changed in recent years, but I was stunned by the bunkering. There aren't that many bunkers, but they're just brilliantly placed. And then round the greens, it felt like they'd repurposed some areas that were sandy into these just rolling, thrilling swales that you can putt out of or pitch out of. The turf's terrific. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Greens facing in all different directions again, and there were plenty of places to approach from, and the place like the back of the hand. Luckily, you were my partner, so you guide me to at least try and hit the ball in the right territory. But yeah, it was terrific. I love the styling of the bunkers too. It's different to the typical revetted links bunker, but it really works there. It's a very pretty golf course. I don't really know what I was expecting, the usual trick of doing hardly any homework in advance, but I loved it. And that, I don't often play matches. The fact we had a little friendly match going just added to the enjoyment of learning the golf course, because we kept kicking each other in the teeth over, against the oppo. They'd hole a long putt or a chip, and we'd manage to get up and down from no man's land more than once. It's terrific. I love the proximity of the city as well. There's something about that. And there are other courses that are very close to an urban landscape. But at Dolymat, you seem to be aiming at those red and white towers half the time. It's just, what was that, disused power station, was it?
Yeah, the pool bag chimneys, which were decommissioned maybe back in early 90s, maybe.
Right. Well, I love that feature. On some tees you're aiming at crane, or and there's real flow to the golf course as well. Like, it was quite busy. That we were a four playing a match, so pretty quick, but play kept going, and there were loads of people around. It just felt like a real golfers club. People out hitting balls before you teed off. The practice range, at some clubs you turn up and the practice range of members don't even know where it is. But Royal Dublin, I can understand why it's a club for good players, because it's a really, really good golf course. It was a joy to get there.
You know, it's funny. I was doing, as you know, I've been doing some research in terms of augmenting the Royal Dublin story historically. I mean, we had a fire in 43, so a lot of the materials were lost. But sort of going back to somebody that was I think a double Irish amateur championship winner at Royal Dublin, some dude called Harold Hilton, who, when asked about Royal Dublin, particularly in Portmarnock, he expressed how difficult Royal Dublin was to get to from the centre of town, but how impossible Portmarnock was. Back then, to get to Portmarnock, you had to get a train from Dublin. Then you had to get down to the motorboat launch, or the rowing boat launch. And if the tide was in, you got a rowing boat across. If the tide was out, you basically got a pony and trap across the estuary. So it was a mission to get there. And I mean, the one saving grace that Dollymount had was there was actually a tram system that brought you from the centre of town to the top of the wooden bridge. And then obviously you had a 15 or 20 minute walk down the bridge to the golf course. Yeah. So, how times have changed. We're an awful lot more connected these days.
I love that idea, though, of, grappling with public transport to get there, and you sort of earn your right to go and play the golf course. There's a lovely thing. Someone was telling me about the old trains that used to run to Royal County Down, and you'd get on those trains, or the members would get on those trains and hit the source the instant the train left the station, and they'd be out for the whole day at County Down. So.
And they'd have what they call the hat man, who basically was doing the draw for when they were playing and who they were playing with. And they still actually have a competition, both in Royal Belfast and Royal County Down, called the Hat.
How lovely.
And in fact, if I recall, I remember listening to Dr. Brian Fleming was on with the lads in Cookie Jar, and one of the old train compartments is actually still knocking around somewhere. It's actually used as a chicken coop.
Brilliant. People need to know that sort of stuff to make sure they don't check it out.
Yeah. Well, however difficult Royal Dublin and Portmarnock were to get to back in those early days of golf, County Louth up in Baltray probably would have been a little bit more difficult, you would have thought.
Yeah.
We were obviously out with Ryan Donaher, the general manager, and good friend of mine, Alan Higgins. Short sets and persimmon. The lads won the first, and you mentioned something about a dog licence. Always the eternal pessimist. For the record, we did get them to 18 before succumbing 2 down.
We did well to get that far.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how the former professional, as in Ryan, and myself were both reduced to scratch for the purposes of our competitive battle. I'm going to cry foul, but hey-ho.
Yeah, they're not listening.
No, and obviously as an unabashed Tom Simpson fan, I mean, Simpson and Gourlay would have revised the golf course back in 1937, and you played a lot of Simpson-influenced courses, including, it must be said, you lucky devil, Morfontaine just prior to your visit to Ireland. How did Baltray measure up to some of the Simpson courses you played?
Well, it's the first links, really, Simpson had worked at Hayling a bit, but I think there's... Hayling's wonderful, and his stuff there is great. But County Louth feels like he probably had more input and did more across the whole of the golf course there. I don't know what I was expecting, but it was just... There was a naturalness to County Louth that I think... is something to do with him. He just he understood flowing lines and strategic design, but without it ever looking like it's imposed or artificial. some of the greens there are just wild. And, I don't know after one visit how much of that was Simpson, but his hand is certainly evident right across the golf course. And it's beautifully presented. Flowing lines that he seemed to create when building greens. It's like a rippled landscape, isn't it? So you sort of don't really see too much of the sea, but you're just in this strip of perfect turf, and the whole place just flows and ripples, and you change direction a fair bit there. There was one or two holes where I just kind of actual jaw dropped at the courage to put the green where they put the green. There's a par 5 at the far end. I should have had the card handy, but and a couple of the greens. So 14's the one that gets mentioned a lot, isn't it?
That's the short one, yeah. And obviously we were playing off a forward tee that day. I took you up to the championship tee box to have a look, and Sea Point Golf Club across the boundary, and that ethereally named Termonfeckin is the village.
Yeah.
Which you got a titter about.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I like the look of Termonfeckin. That 14th gets mentioned a lot, but it was just, and the green's just wonderful. It just feels like it's been plucked out of the landscape a bit. So, it's got fall-offs on every side, and these bunkers are waiting you.
No, there's no bunkers.
There's no bunkers.
There's no bunkers. And it's funny. I mean, and sorry to cut across you there. I came across an article with Simpson, there's a quote from Simpson actually, after they revised the golf course and they opened it, and there was mumblings and mutterings about the 14th, and that knob that's at the front of the, maybe just slightly off centre on the left hand side, which the members initially wanted removed, and he basically put his foot down going, look, if you remove that, you fundamentally change the golf hole for the worse, and they left it there, thank God.
So you showed me a bit of that, the report that he'd done, and he was very direct about what was there beforehand. Yeah. But, you don't build masterpieces by being meek. And he and Molly Gawley certainly got their teeth into that property.
Yeah. And meek is not a word that you would use in conjunction with Mr.
Simpson, no. I'm still stuck as to what to write about it, really. It's, I'm struggling. Because I absolutely loved it, but I normally get some sort of a theme that I think, that's it, that's my way into this one. I'm still reeling. It'll come, I think. And I think there was so much there. Hole after hole just blew me away visually, but also there were just... there's no weak holes there. Not that there were weak holes on either of the other two, actually, but I'm stuck. It's battered me somehow. I absolutely loved it, and I knew I would, but what to write hasn't come forth yet. I think basically what's happening is I'm just angling for another go at it to work out what was... He does that to me, Simpson. He's like, I love the work of Colt and Fowler, and I played other architects as well and really enjoyed the challenge they provide. There's something sort of underhand about Simpson. I think he was, dabbling in the dark arts or something. Played New Zealand again this morning and noticed something I hadn't noticed before, which was clearly him just quietly, putting two fingers up to the generations of golfers suffering behind him. He's just, it was so much fun. Yeah, I'm gutted we lost, but, you didn't lose. It was me. I was too distracted by the golf course, I think, to hit the ball.
So, dreaming of Irish golf over the past number of months, as I'm sure you have done, are there any particular loops, holes, or features that your conscious, or indeed subconscious, has drawn you back to?
That central section of St. Patrick's, 10, 11, 12 is just, I love that because they're not the obvious holes there. So that's one. Just the feel of freedom of just swinging round and round. Coast Guards, 9, again at Rossapenna. Cairn, I think it's the second at Cairns. It's got an immense dune between you and the fairway and the green, which Jamie and I called Everest. I'm not sure if it has a name, and that green perched up there, it's just so hard to hit. I missed short, I missed left and right, I missed in the bunker. I just, I lost track of how many times we played. I might have played it 6 times and I didn't make par there. So that one keeps coming back and taunting me, but it was wonderful. And the first of Ali's holes that swings up through that valley is just, that's always there. It's just the courage to build a hole like that and then pull it off. It's a brilliant hole. And no one else, few people would have the guts to go through that bit of land because they're so extreme, the dunes, but it completely works. And it feels, in fact, the whole of Cairn, it's a relatively modern golf course, the Hackett routing, let alone Ali's work there, but it feels timeless. It feels like it's been there forever. I loved the closing section at Dollymount, from that plaque where, what does it say?
It's the 1963 or 64 Carroll's tournament.
That's right.
Eric Brown is in the clubhouse lead. Christy O'Connor Sr. finishes eagle, birdie, eagle. Brown is in the clubhouse. Here's the cheers. Now is exactly what's going on. The 18th was a par 5 at the time. It's now a par 4. The picture of him holding the putt on the 18th is obviously in the Christy O'Connor room. In fact, I recently was contacted by the son of a good friend of the late Christie's who had apparently the putter that Christie used to hold the putt.
Yeah.
So I passed that on to our actually Christie's centenary birthday was celebrated this year, 100 years since he was born. So I don't know, I passed over responsibility to somebody else. So I'm not quite sure exactly what happened with that, but yeah, that's what the plaque says.
Oh, wonderful. Well, you stand there and you look at that plaque and you think, wow, this club has just been home to so many golfers for such a long time, just this epic history. And then stuff like that's happened there, and great champions across that, playing in the Irish Open there. My heroes growing up, some of those, Seve and Langer and people like Woosnam playing, and Lee Trevino, just to be, so I love that finish there. 16's a fabulous sort of teasing short hole, and I think we lost that one to a 3, didn't we? Another one of Everett's whole birdie putts. Yeah. And then I love 18. It's an extreme hole in a way. A bit like 17 at New Zealand to me. It's nothing like it at a hole, but the extremity of the angle of the dog leg reminded me of that, but you've got to hit the shot. It doesn't matter where you put your drive, and that's the first challenge. You've got to hit a heroic shot to finish, and we managed to scrape by there. I don't think the Elpo can believe we won that match, but
no, it's a card record, but just as well it was index 5 because you would have shot. So yeah. The approach putt wasn't hit with any particular conviction, but
I didn't need to because I knew I was going to hold next one. So.
Well, you also knew that Everett was going to hold his putt as well.
Yeah, and I think so. I think my favourite thing that hasn't drifted back in a dream yet, but having played quite a lot of golf the last few years, and you just see places where the golfers aren't repairing their pitch marks, it drives me absolutely mental. But my main thing out of a wonderful trip was just trying to get my pitch bearer into the turf at Portmarnock, having finally made a dent in one of the greens. It's so firm, you can't get the thing in to repair it. And I thought, wow, people who have responsibility for looking after golf courses and, maintenance budgets and stuff, they need to come see Portmarnock because it is just as good as it gets. So that's what my subconscious is drifting on about.
Yeah, look, you play a lot of golf, obviously, and seem to have an innate ability to consistently draw together different metaphors and similes. And how would you compare and contrast the game of golf in Ireland to that in England, Scotland and Wales?
I was thinking about that. So I think I'd put, and it makes sense when you look at what people do with their travel schedule. So I'd put Irish links golf right up there with Scottish golf. There's fewer links in Ireland, no doubt about that. But I understand why people go to those two places first. I love the way the courses are presented. The course come first. It was the message I was getting from the places I've been in Ireland recently. And, they all have other lovely facilities, including practice facilities and clubhouse and so on. But they put the golf course first. And that's really, that's where it all gets better from that point. If the golf course is in good condition, everyone's in a good mood, the rest will come with it, including revenue, where they want to chase, external revenue and so on. The welcome, I think, is really important, and particularly in Ireland. I just want to be really careful I don't sort of point out places where you don't get a warm welcome, but it can feel like you're not welcome as a guest at private members clubs sometimes. And in Ireland, that is just never the case in my experience. They're delighted to have people there. They're delighted to share these, complete gems. And I've seen lots of that in Scotland too. So they feel like a very similar thing to me. I think there's more capacity for drama in Ireland because some of the coastlines are wilder. But you've probably got fewer links, so those two things balance out a bit. Strangely, the one thing that brought home to me playing so many Irish links this year, and a few Scottish ones, but was how varied the landscapes are in England. So England, I don't think we do as good a job of selling our golfing product in England and Wales, I guess, to some degree, as they do in Scotland and Ireland, where it's, critical for some of the local economies. Tourism Ireland do an amazing job of that, and I'm grateful to them because some of this has come about from their support and Azalea, who they work with, and they do a great job. And those places should be on people's radar, but England has world-class links, and it also has this just ridiculous stretch of heathland that I'm lucky to live near, and moorland and parkland. It feels like there's more variety in England, but we don't do ourselves much in the way of favours of getting people to see it. They fly into London, then fly out to Scotland and Ireland, and I understand why, but that was a sort of...
Well, their loss is your gain.
Yeah.
It's one way to look at it. I mean, I've been dipping my toe in English waters from a golfing perspective of late, and as I said to Mike Clayton last week, there's 1,888. The last figure I was able to find 1,888 golf courses in England, let alone the additions in Wales and Scotland. But the quantity and the variety and just the density of good golf around within an hour's drive from where you are is just extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah, and that second, I was talking about this morning with the gentleman I was at New Zealand with, the second tier around here, in terms of the reputation, if you like. The top tier is wonderful, and who wouldn't want to go and play St George's Hill and Sunningdale? They're amazing golf courses. But the second tier is so strong, and I got a sense this year and last October of, actually in Ireland you've got that too, and in Scotland as well, but the second... Not everyone's aware of County Louth, and people don't know about Mulranny, and there's a whole load. There's a big list I suspect you're going to reel off that I haven't seen yet. There's so much good golf around the Irish coast, and you don't have to just go and tick off the big names. You could spend weeks and weeks there and just not get bored of variety. And
I was relatively recently contacted by Tony Deere, our mutual friend, writer extraordinaire for, amongst other publications, Links magazine and forth, and he was kind of asking me where I thought from a geographical or regional perspective was the best for golf. And at the time I had just returned from the North Coast and Donegal and Portrush, and suggested that it might be the North Coast. In giving it further consideration, for the purposes of our chat today, I've actually come to the conclusion that I think it's actually the greater Dublin area in terms of quality links, a little bit of inland thrown in. I mean, so we've mentioned Portmarnock and Valtray and Dollymount. You've got the Jemison links right beside Portmarnock. You've got the island. You have another Simpson favourite of mine, Carlow, which is about an hour and a bit away. Corbelis, which is obviously a municipal golf course. Just up the road, you have Royal County Down. Ardglass, that's kind of your thing. The European Club south of Dublin. Rosslare, the aforementioned Fox Rock, and various other places of the Grange and the Castle. One golf course anyway, that has cold connections. So I think I'm going to recant what I said to Tony, that actually Dublin's the place to be. And I get the fact that people like getting to the Atlantic seaboard, and you've already pointed out that actually the links courses in those parts oftentimes are a good clip away from each other. So, more time of the car, and particularly with our North American friends, they tend to try and squeeze as much golf in as many different places as possible. And our road network has got better, but certainly on the Atlantic seaboard, the southwest and the west, it's still a little bit hit and miss, shall we say.
Yeah.
The advantage obviously you have in basing your stay around Dublin is that, things are that little bit easier to get to. You get a feeling for the place a bit more if you stay in the one place and base yourself somewhere. It's a little bit more chilled out as well, that it's not always go, get back in the bus or get back in the car.
Yeah. So much more of the country than I do, and there's plenty of places that are on my list elsewhere to go and visit or go back to. But just in that Dublin area, I mean, I had a couple of friends who were more or less livid that I wasn't going to see the island. An invite to Corbelis, I was very keen to take advantage of, but I can't do that this time. And a couple of other people, I think Sam at Cookie Jar as well, was like, you called it Royal Corbelis, but it just says terrific. Like, why are you not going there? And it was simply a function of juggling the time scales. But you've mentioned, that might have been 10. Jameson Link sounds interesting. A general point from that is just slow down when you're touring places. You get a glimpse of somewhere at first play, but I think you get a lot more of a feel for a club or an area by hanging around a bit more. And some of the places we've mentioned, like, the Yellow 9 at Portmarnock, you could spend the day at Portmarnock and just slow down a bit and walk the course as well or whatever, and probably come out having got twice as much out of it. And if you stay in the Dublin area, there's so much more culturally to see. If it were me, I'd try and break them up a bit more into distinct visits. So, this year I'm doing Fife or Dublin. Next year don't try and, drive halfway across the country to go and tick off Turnberry or whatever, because there are 100 other places that will just give you as much surprise and joy as that. And you're helping those sort of places that are the second or third tier, or the places next door to the $400 ticket green fee,
I think the word you're looking for there is immersion.
Yeah. And it only comes, and I just got a tiny glimpse of that not a tiny glimpse, a massive lasting dose of it at Rosapenna, but immersing yourself in the place is just such a, it changes you. That's sort of one of the ideas of travel, isn't it? That it changes you. Not that we need changing, but you come back having learned something or seeing something differently. And I've had a couple of golfing trips where that's certainly been the case, and Rosapenna was one of those. That's why I was gazing off into the middle distance before holding a 7-iron, because it just kind of, I'd forgotten about or moved beyond loads of tiddly little things that were bothering me, and golf had worked its magic on me again.
If I can find that picture, that will be the picture that's utilised for this particular episode. So I hope you don't mind. And the funny thing is, I actually took that picture while you weren't looking at me. You weren't aware I was taking the picture. So that's why it works so well.
Yeah, I remember seeing it. It just looks like I've forgotten something, which is generally the pose I hold in life these days. Getting older.
Listen, I know you've got a hard stop on this, so I have one final question, and we have asked this question to you, so I'm going to ask a variation of the same question. So I'm just wondering, in terms of book recommendations, have you read anything golf related recently that you would recommend to listeners who are looking to augment their golfing library?
Oh my goodness. You didn't warn me you were going to ask me this. So a couple of things. So I have a dear friend who loves Darwin, and keeps sending me Darwin. And I have another golfing friend who I've not met in person yet, who asked me a Darwin-related question from Australia, and it had me digging around in Playing the Like, which I know lots of people will have read Playing the Like, but he's the master, and I don't read it. If I read Darwin every day, it would make my life better. And Playing the Like is a fabulous place to start. So that's one. I'm gonna keep going until you actually cut me off. So there's two more here. Charlie Price, Golfer at Large is just a collection of his golf writing, and he was a really good player. I think
you've mentioned that before, so I'm going to deem that out of bounds.
Okay, I've got another one here. Yeah, here we are. Longhurst I've been reading a bit of, Only on Sundays, and I think the other one's Not Only on Sundays. I think so. Longhurst is lovely and writes with a real sort of spirit and interest, and he was just tied up with so many people who interest me. You know, he was there early days at Addington and hanging around with Darwin and stuff, and he writes in a beautiful way. I cannot see, though it's not far away, I've been reading the Chicago Golf Club book, The Prairie Rainer, which I've read loads of golf history books, but The Prairie Rainer is just amazingly researched and written. It's beautiful text to read. The authors, who my mind's gone blank again, they've clearly lived and breathed Chicago Golf Club, so that side of it's wonderful. And then you get the way it's presented. So it's a coffee table size book. It's just beautifully done. It's got fabulous photos of a course whose architectural pedigree I was, sadly ignorant of until picking up. I was talking about Chicago this morning with a friend, and, I need to get there. There's so much there, but this book is just, it's reignited the flame for golf history and archive work, and I'm really, really interested in that. And now I've seen a sort of example of what you can do with that. But it's a joy to consume, the writing and everything else, the presentation and pictures and old diagrams and course maps and so on. It's just an inspiring thing about an incredibly inspiring place that no one knows about. Well, they do, the architecture grad know all about Chicago, but it's not somewhere you can go and play. And yet I have this book where it just lays out a wonderful narrative of how something really precious in golf came to be. It's fabulous. Shall I keep going? I can keep going. I think I've blown myself out now.
How do you have time to read all these books? I mean, the amount of golf you play, and you've got a wife
I'm not
and
playing
kids.
that much. I'm not playing. I play once a week, and
likely story.
I do play once a week, pretty much. Time is not something I've got an abundance of, but at the same time, things like the Prairie Rainer or Darwin, I only need to dip into them, and they'll provide a spark that gets me up and out of my chair, and wanting to go and explore somewhere else or write myself. So anything that helps me do that is gladly received.
For a man that doesn't like the sound of his own voice, you acquit yourself very, very well on things like this. I want to bid you a good day, and thank you for extending the time to us today. It's always a pleasure to hear from you and to share musings and thoughts and waffle.
Thank you, Shane.
Continued success with the travelling, the riding. We look forward to further adventures together and further publications, hopefully, Richard.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm working on that stuff. And Pennell was part of that journey, I think. So, yeah, fingers crossed. No news yet, but my brain is firing on that stuff. So, and thank you. You know, the last 3 years and doing a bit of this golf writing, it's changed me really massively. And some of it's the golf courses, and a lot of it is the process of writing and putting myself under a bit of, creative pressure to do it. But most of it is the people, and you're part of that, and Simon's part of that, and there's 100 more who I might not have even met were it not for messing around with a fountain pen and playing a bit of golf. So I'm so grateful. So thank you.
Well, listen, have a good winter. Let's hope the hibernation, if it ever materializes, works out. You get a bit more time to focus on your game, you self-deprecating and so.
Oh, I need it. I was terrible this morning. Abject.
You can't be good all the time. You need to close your eyes and do it with one hand.
That's where I've been going wrong, yeah. Maybe I'll invest I'll ask for a blindfold for my birthday, I think that might help. So yeah.
That could be the way forward. Listen, take it easy, man.
Thank you, Shane. See you soon.
Many thanks for tuning in. We really do hope you enjoyed the show. If you don't yet follow us on Twitter, X, Instagram, or indeed our Substack account, you can do so at Firm and Fast Golf on X, at Firm and Fast Golf Podcast on Instagram, and at the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast occasional newsletter on Substack. Finally, if you're so inclined, you could leave us a star rating or even a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really would be appreciated. Until the next time, happy golfing.